Hey guys, what's going on? Um, I am going to talk to you guys a little bit today about classification because we're getting into like the biological portion of the class, and the rest of the semester is mostly about animals and the classification of those. So like how we divide everything up. Sorry, my puppy's right here and she's demanding attention. Okay, so enough with the puppies. Let's first talk about just like what taxonomy actually is. So we we as humans like to be organized, I guess. So when it comes to living organisms, we have we have certain ways of trying to name everything, sort of put it into different categories, kind of as we go along. And that's what taxonomy is. It's the science of classification. So back in the early 17, let's go back before the early 1700s, before Carolus Linnaeus, or actually his original name was Carl von Linné. It's kind of weird. I'll tell you about it in a second. Anyway, the first person to really try classifying things was probably Aristotle, Greek philosopher. It was probably the first like true scientist, right? And mostly when he was classifying things, it was kind of, is it an animal, is it a rock, or is it a plant? And really for like 1500 years, about that, something like that. Like everyone was just kind of like, yeah, that's good. Okay, we'll just sort of stick with who's going to be smarter than Aristotle. We'll stick with him. And I mean, it kind of sort of worked. Yeah, it kind of really didn't work all that well. There was no sort of set standard for how to do anything. So early 1700s, this Dutch dude named Carl von Linné comes along and he sort of sets up this system. And for the most part, we actually still use it today. Now, he wound up changing his name to Carolus Linnaeus because he thought that everything should be named using Latin, including people. Doesn't matter what it is that you're talking about. Latin is it, and so he Latinized his name, Carl von Linné, to Carolus Linnaeus. You just know that the chicks were lining up for this dude. Anyway, he wanted to set up this classification using like a hierarchy from largest, most broad to smallest and most specific. And groups of organisms were created based on their physiological similarities. So when we or what he came up with was this idea of kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And I know that, like in biology, you guys probably learned the phrase King Philip came over for good soup or good spaghetti. But I had a teacher who was far more creative than that, and he always said the King Philip came over for great sex because you're going to remember that, you know. Anyway, so a kingdom is really, really broad. Kingdom Animalia, Kingdom Plantae, Kingdom Fungi. We'll talk about all of the different kingdoms in the next video. But in this one, kingdom is really, really broad. We've actually come back and added in something above that called domain. And it mostly has to do with, is it a prokaryote or is it a eukaryote? Does it have a nucleus or does it not have a nucleus? So you go from kingdom to phylum. Okay. And a phylum, there's a bunch of phylums in every kingdom. In fact, that's what we're sort of going to be talking about for like the rest of the year, more or less. There's a bunch of different phylums in Kingdom Animalia. And then in each phylum, there's a whole bunch of classes. And in each class, there's a bunch of orders. And in each order, there's a bunch of families. And in each family, there's a bunch of genuses. And in each genus, There's at least one species. And so it gets more and more and more specific kind of as you move down that list. Let me give you an example right here. So if we're looking at bottlenose dolphins, okay, Atlantic bottlenose dolphins, that's what we have out at the beach. So kingdom Animalia, it's an animal. Under that kingdom, there's phylums, Cnidaria, Platyhelminthes, Nematoda, Mollusca, Arthropoda. It goes on and on. We're going to talk about, like I said, a bunch of those. But there's also a phylum, Chordata. Chordata are mostly things with a backbone. There's a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, that's what they are. And in Chordata, there's a bunch of classes like Chondrichthyes and Osteichthyes and Aves and Reptilia and Amphibia, some you've probably heard of, and class Mammalia. So kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia. So we're talking about animals that have a backbone that are mammals, and then order Cetacea. Cetaceans are whales. And then family Delphinidae. So not only are these whales, but they're dolphins. And then we get into the genus and species. The genus is Tursiops, and the species is Truncatus. Let's see, here we go. Just look at something just real quick. If we look at the genus is capitalized, the species is lowercase. That's on purpose. It's also in italics. That's also on purpose. So if you think of the genus as the last name and the species as like your first name, what Linnaeus called this was binomial nomenclature, meaning everything has two names. Okay, I'm Kevin Turner. The whole purpose of having two names is it gives you kind of a reference. Okay, so in my family, in the Turners, there's only one Kevin, fortunately. But there's a bunch of different Turners. And I don't know, we're kind of an odd bunch. Actually, we really are. It's a highly educated group, but I'll tell you what, they're kind of odd. We've got dentists, a couple of accountants, a couple of nurses, several engineers, a doctor, an entrepreneurial, like, businesswoman, lawyer. Yeah, we've got a lot of different people. Anyway, when the Turners get together, you can kind of like, we all sort of look sort of similar. You can see the family resemblance. It's probably true in your family. You look at other people in your family and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I get this. I know what they are. So, Turners. And then you have first name. There's me. There's Kevin Turner, obviously the best one of the bunch. So every last living organism has a two-part name to it, a last name and a first name. The genus is always capitalized. The species is always lowercase. And it's always in italics or underlined. So that way, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you look at something in some kind of literature, if you see it written like this, that's an organism. That's its scientific name. It's also always in Latin or squirrels. Squirrels are tormenting my dogs. This has been happening all day. Sam. Anyway, it's written in Latin or ancient Greek, and the whole reason for that is so it doesn't favor any one language or country over another. So an organism's scientific name is its scientific name. It doesn't matter if that's in English, French, Russian, Japanese, doesn't matter. That's its scientific name. And we use this mostly so that we don't have to use common names. Here's a cool example. The all of these animals over here: cougar, devil cat, screaming cat, ghost cat, mountain lion, panther. They're all the same species. But depending on where you're from, this is just in English too. Remember, this is like just like in the United States. Depending on, oh, also puma. Forgot about puma. The common lexicon or the common language of the region that you happen to be in, everybody has different common names. And that's, like I said, not even getting into the fact that in French it's going to be one thing, in German it's going to be something else, in Romanian or Japanese or whatever. In binomial nomenclature, they have one name. So that makes things a little bit easier. Polar bear is Ursus maritimus. The first part, the genus Ursus, is the genus that the organism belongs in. That's all bears. Maritimus is the maritime bear, the polar bear. I'm not sure what the others are. I'll have to look it up. Now I'm curious. Oh, here we go. Squirrels. Hey, Sam. You're not Sam. You're the other dog. Sorry about that. So the second type, maritimus, is what refers to as polar bears. Here's another one. One of my personal favorites. I love sharks. You guys know I love sharks. Carcharodontis melanopterus is the black-tip reef shark. Really, really cool shark. Carcharodontis, there's a lot of different animals in that genus. Keep in mind, it's capitalized. Melanopterus is lowercase. These are mostly reef sharks. It's sort of the common, we call them requiem sharks, the sort of typical looking sharks. But the animals in Carcharodontis, there's a bunch of them. But Melanopterus means black-finned. So there you go. And we can use things called dichotomous keys to organize how things are classified and to kind of look them up. Let me show you kind of an example here. This is kind of a dichotomous key. We actually have several different organisms that are right here: algae, mosses, ferns, conifers, and angiosperms, or sunflowers. So we'll start off, is it a plant? If it's a plant, then great, then we can move on. And it's kind of like, all right, check that off. Then you move to the next one. Does it make seeds or does it not make seeds? If we're looking like, say, at an algae, okay, it looks like plant-like. Doesn't make seeds. Does it have true roots? If it has true roots, you'd come down this way. If it doesn't have roots, you'd come down this way. Okay, it doesn't have roots. Does it have stems? Nope, it doesn't have stems. Okay, so therefore it's an algae. If it has some roots and some stems, it has some roots, stems, but doesn't really have leaves, then it's a moss. If it has roots and stems, it's a fern. So if it doesn't have seeds, but it has roots and stems, it's a fern. Okay. If it does make seeds and it makes flowers, it's an angiosperm. If it doesn't make flowers, it's a conifer. It's a pine tree. So the way that like dichotomous keys work is you sort of start at the top. Always start right at the very top, and you kind of work your way down through the list every single time. Let's look at this guy right here. We'll walk through and see if we can do this. These are some fish that we would find in lakes in the Midwest. So we're going to look at this little guy right there, and we start off at number 1. Does it have whisker-like barbels present on the tip of its head? Meaning, is it a catfish? Nope, that's definitely not a catfish. So no whisker-like barbels. Go on to number 3. So we skip number 2. Number 3, is the mouth facing downward? If it was facing downward, then we'd go to 4, but the mouth is not facing downward, so we go to 5. Is the body elongate, more than twice as long as it is tall? Well, it looks to be about as long as it is tall. That's about the same length right there. Okay, so the body is not elongate. It's slab-sided. It's not more than twice as long. Okay, it's a bluegill. There we go. I've been dealing with squirrels harassing my dogs all day. Let's do one more, and I'm actually going to give you one of these to do kind of as some work. Let's see, what should we do? Do this one. We'll do a catfish. Okay, so we come way back up to the top. Start over. Whisker-like barbels on its head. Yep, definitely. So we go on to number 2. Is the caudal fin forked or is the caudal fin rounded? So we have 2 of them right here. You can see this one, it's forked. So that's a channel cat. There we go. That's it. And that's all we're going to be doing for this video. So I'll come back to you.